Japan. I'm JJWalsh, your host in Hiroshima, Japan. And today I have the exciting new collaboration between my show and Zenbird. Very excited to welcome once again Roger Ong. Thank you so much for joining.
No, thank you. Thank you for
It's
doing this.
Yeah,
Looking
it's
forward to
great
this.
to have this collaboration. So we're going to
Mhm.
try to do this once a month to feature some of the articles from Zenbird that month and go a little bit more in depth about the topics. Roger, before we start, you want to just briefly introduce yourself again?
All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Roger. I'm editor in chief at Zenbird Media. So Zenbird Media is really a simple concept. We are an online magazine, and anything related to sustainability in Japan, we're interested. We try to write columns, do news, and from time to time do interviews. And of course, our target, originally is people towards people outside of Japan, but realize there's a lot of interest in Japan itself too. So yeah, so
And
we
I had the chance to interview your founder of
yeah
Harch,
yeah
the overlying media company, and
Mhm.
actually Zemberg is one of many of the media that Harch is doing, and everything, even though they're very different topics, everything is focused on sustainability in terms of how can we improve the lives of people, how can we reduce our impact on the environment, or maybe even improve the environment, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And making profits, right? So we
Yep.
really want to have this interplay and balance between all three,
Mhm.
which is the focus of my show and the focus of your media. So
Mhm.
perfect collaboration.
Yeah, indeed.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, today we're talking about four different topics.
Mhm.
Now, the first one we should hit is probably the biggest topic about the 10 R's.
Oh,
Now,
yeah,
Roger,
that's right.
recently I was coming across the 5 R's,
Hmm.
and then the 5 R's is often like different focuses, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So we have the 5 R's, which is refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. So
Hmm.
composting is in there. And then you have refuse, reduce, reuse, repurpose, recycle, and then you have reduce, refuse, recycle, reuse, rot. So there's a lot of different versions, and then it makes you think we need more than five. We have more than five, right?
Well,
So
it
you targeted 10. I think
hmm
that's
that's
better.
right.
Yeah.
Well, now when I first started looking at the R's, I'm like, how many R's are there in the first place?
So
Right.
many.
I mean, we
Yeah.
started with three, and then we have as we if we look at different aspects, we look from different industry, if you will, looking from zero waste, look from ethical production. Different companies actually have their own different type of arts, but what in the end we realize is actually um, although different companies, different brands may define R's differently, the number of R's evenly, they all come from the same foundation. And that is the idea of a circular economy to make sure whatever we do can be returned back into the economy and hopefully create zero waste through it. Mm.
Yeah.
So there is
And
no
yeah.
conflict between the different R's.
Right. But I think it's a big mind shift that needs to happen, right?
Indeed.
Because the way we usually consume things, or the very typical, the status quo, is use the resource, make the product, throw the product away.
Mm.
That straight line
Mm-hmm.
from the natural resource to the landfill.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now we know that is so problematic,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Huge problems with that system. So
it is.
thinking more circular,
Mm-hmm.
like where does it come from? Can we reuse it? Can we put it back to use?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just over and over.
Yep.
Thinking circular, I think, is a big mindset shift.
Yes.
But once people do start thinking that way, it becomes a bit easier, right?
Yes, that's right. So rather than try to memorize what the R's are, It's not a test in a way. And just I think the easiest message I always tell people is ask yourself two questions. Wherever you use something, ask yourself where it comes from and where does it go. If you do not know where it comes from fully, and you don't know how to uh, treat it, as how to recycle it, how to return it to the economy, so to speak, then it is probably not a good thing to consume. And that's how we can play a part in the circular economy as consumers. Mm.
Yeah. I'm showing the website right now where you wrote this great article.
Mhm.
And you talk about three sections:
Mhm.
design, consumption, and return.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Right. So when although there's 10 R's, what we realize is, how to say, well, this article was written to answer two questions, right? How do I tell if a business is sustainable? And how do I tell if a business is more sustainable? Now it sounds like same strange concept, but take for example, Cafe A uses plastic straw, Cafe B uses paper straw, Cafe C uses no straw. So you see, which is more sustainable, which is better? And then maybe you can throw in the Cafe D, 50% paper, 50% plastic. Is that sustainable? And we can identify these sustainable businesses by looking at the 10 R's and see does the business use any of this. And we've broken it down into three different so-called phases, because there is a hierarchy of importance in them. So the higher they are on the rank, which is here refuse, rethink, and reduce, they're going to work better than the R's at the bottom. Now, not to say that they are not important. The lower R's have roles to play too. But for example, in the design phase, we're really talking about redesigning business models to make to go back to zero and see how the business can play a better part in circular economy rather than just recycle, or the three R's that we have been focused on for the
Yeah.
past few decades. Mm.
Yeah, that's great. It's really important to try to make diagrams like this, which show, of course, design at the top. That's what we want to do most, right?
Mm, yeah.
And then consumption, that's the next most. And then the least is the recycle recovery, because that has a big carbon impact and more pollution.
Indeed.
The others are better, right?
Mhm.
Let's take the plastic straw example, because
Mm.
I
Right.
was doing a seminar on sustainability the other day with some students,
Mhm.
and I always think people know about plastic straws. They're just, everybody knows that's wrong, right?
Mhm.
But I don't think that's true in Japan. I think a
Mhm.
lot of people still don't get why it's important to stop using plastic straws, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So she said, I noticed recently Starbucks and some other companies are stopping using plastic straws. They're using paper, or some cafes are using reusable straws. Does it really matter? She says. And I was like, yes, I love that question, because I would say, and then you have to like personalize it from
Mhm.
your what you know in your experience, right?
Mhm. Yep.
So for me personally, I do river cleanups, river and beach cleanups once a month. I see plastic straws.
All right.
I know if they're in the water, they're going to last hundreds of years, right? So
Mhm.
that's a problem.
Mm.
I know plastic straws also, to make plastic straws, you have to use fossil fuels. That's a problem, right?
Mhm. Yep.
I know paper straws can go back to nature. We can compost that. It
Mhm.
can biodegrade. So
Mhm.
that's better.
Mhm.
So for this case, I would say paper straws better than plastic straws, right? But it's like you have to talk about each example. Like for Starbucks, this is better in this case, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know, making generalizations. In general, you can say plastic straws are not as good, but you kind of have to individualize the answer, and I think that makes it more complicated, right?
Indeed. So one of the things that when we look at circular economy is we cannot say we copy paste solutions. The last time we talked a bit about this as well. So it's like not every solution is going to be able to be implemented um, immediately at the level that we want, because we have to look at local needs, right? But I do think that just replacing plastic straws with paper straws is not it's not as it's not sustainable. I have to say that. Because
It's a better option, but
it's
it's
not the best
not
option.
the ideal option. It's
Mm,
not the best option, but it's better than
mhm.
what they had,
No,
right? So it's a step.
I think
No?
we are I think we are finding excuses for ourselves. Because again, there are solutions out there. It's not say we can copy paste the solutions, but what if we stop providing straws? I think what 10Rs want to do is to, especially for the design phase, we want to redesign in a way that make consumers think. So changing plastic straws to paper straws, we are still encouraging people to use straws. Do we really need straws? What happened to steel straws, the reusable, and that's the consumption part, consumption R, reuse. And I think there are better ways than just use and throw. Again, back to the linear economy. And I think I haven't done any research on this yet, but I think producing paper straws actually produces more carbon emissions than plastic straws.
I don't, well, I mean, there's so many factors, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it going to end up in the environment? Then paper would be so much better.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you another example. I went to a really cool coffee shop in San Francisco when I
Mm-hmm.
visited a couple years ago,
Yeah.
and they were using compostable cups,
Mm-hmm.
compostable
Nice.
straws,
Nice.
and reusable cups
Mm-hmm.
and reusable straws for
Mm-hmm.
people in the cafe.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, from a business point of view, that makes a lot of sense
Mm-hmm.
because they're doing what they can for 100% the ideal reuse in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
But they know in reality, the consumer wants to take it to their office.
Mm-hmm.
That's their lifestyle habit that's very hard to change.
Mm-hmm.
And if they stopped having takeout cups or straws completely, they might lose some customers, and it's a very competitive business, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So compostable, I think, because San Francisco has a good system of composting, that's
Mm-hmm.
a good option
Yeah.
for them, right?
Yeah. They have the infrastructure to deal with, uh, to prevent waste. So, if I may, and that's why I think that's where the customization comes in. We have to look at the needs and what the local has. Now, I understand. On the other hand, I heard that in London, I don't think they have a very strong composting infrastructure. So that is a concern for them. So their solution was actually to have takeaway reusables, and you can take them back to the office and return them at the when it's easy, when it's convenient for them.
I
So
love that
yeah, there's
idea.
different
And
ideas there.
Roger, you brought that up with Starbucks, I think, that they have
Mhm.
an idea that you can order
Yeah,
re and go.
yeah, that's right.
They're trying this new idea. I
Mhm.
love this idea. Do you want to introduce it?
Okay. So Re and Go, I discovered Re and Go while I was in Okinawa. And it was a very good timing because they were doing their pilots there. So the idea is take away bento boxes. That was the first pilot. And they tried it out and they had very high positive, they received high, how to say, very, very well received. So what it does is if I go to a shop, I want to take away food, I order through their app. As you can see, a similar app on the picture there. And I say, I want to use a reusable bento box. So the restaurant or cafe will pack the food in that box, have you take away. And once you are finished, once you take the bento box, and you finish eating, then you have to return, right? And you can return it to any nearby partners that Riango has. And the picture we saw just now is about Starbucks, and this is their second pilot. So Okinawa worked and now they want to scale it in a bigger city. So the next target was Tokyo, and particularly in the Shibuya area with Starbucks. Yeah, I'm still waiting if they have Kishakai, to share their results. Looking out for that, but I think it can. I think it was successful. That's what I heard from other people. It's just hearsay. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing their result. They finished their pilot, and March. So yeah, it's very recent.
That's really exciting. I remember when I started this talk show 2 years ago, and I
Mm,
talked to a wooden bento box maker,
mm,
Caillou Package, right?
mm,
And I was saying, wouldn't it be great to have reusable bentos, at least ekiben,
mm,
in the Japanese stations all
mm.
across Japan? And you
Yep.
have the same style box,
Mm-hmm.
so people can eat it on the train. We know that most people eat it on the train, right?
Yep.
So they buy it at the station, they eat it on the train, and then there's a collection box on
Mm-hmm.
the train. There's a collection box on the station.
Mm-hmm.
So these bento boxes can be reused and severely reduce the amount of waste, right?
Indeed. Indeed.
Amazing. It would be a
Mm-hmm.
game changer. So it's so exciting to see companies starting to do it in connection with delivery systems.
Mm-hmm.
um, Imagine if Uber
Mm,
offer, or some of the food deliveries, if they offered you the option to have only reusable containers,
mm-hmm.
like the loop system
Mm-hmm.
for food
Yep.
delivery from supermarkets, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yep.
Teracycle is trying to do now.
That's right.
So much great potential there.
Yeah, it did. And that's the strange thing. There's so much we have the solutions, right? And there's so much potential. There's so much gaps that as consumers ourselves, we can identify such gaps. So why aren't more business, pushing it? So it comes back down to awareness issue. For example, the plastic straws. Yeah, why not? There's not a lot of people saying rejecting plastic straws here. So one is awareness. Second is we need more leadership from the government to say, hey, we are pushing for this. Mm.
Yeah. And another thing I would love to add about plastic straws or
Mm-hmm.
waribashi, people are concerned about their health, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if
Yes, that's
you
right.
if you tell them the information, like if
Mm-hmm.
you buy your own reusable hashi, your own reusable straw,
Mm-hmm.
you can have peace of mind
Mm-hmm.
knowing that it's clean because you cleaned it
Mm-hmm.
and you're using it and you
Mm-hmm.
can clean it again. So when you use waribashi, you don't know where that wood is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who's been touching the wood on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Have people sneezed on it? You don't know what's inside that plastic straw. Is
Mm-hmm.
it dust? Is
Mm-hmm.
it gross? Something that it's picked up along the way
Mm-hmm.
since it was made, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you have your own reusable one, you should feel more confident. This is clean.
Mm-hmm.
This is safe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's right. And it extends beyond just bringing our having our own straws, having our own chopsticks. And it goes for food too. I know this food comes from me, kind of thing. And I think sometimes we find it we see it as a distant problem. I don't think they don't understand that plastic is not a plastic. The material itself is not a bad thing, but the way we use and I think a lot of people find it as a distant problem, much like climate change. I know the effects are bad, but maybe it's not gonna affect me yet. Yeah. Mm,
That's a really important point.
mm,
So that's a great article about the 10 R's. I'm going to put the link right here so people can read the whole
mm.
thing.
Okay.
There's lots of great information in there. People should go revisit. We have 3 more articles, so we got to move on, Roger.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about washi paper. I love
Ah.
this article too.
Yes. So there's it's a short story, but it's very essential. It's about Japanese paper. Well, we call it washi, and the combination between sustainability and Japanese culture. So there are two parts to this article. The first part is understanding how Japanese paper is a sustainable material. So it's sustainable because it comes from renewable resources from fast-growing trees. So there's no worry about overlogging or deforestation. It is also biodegradable. Once used, it can be returned to the soil. uh, the second part, which is more major part, is it introduces two companies that uses new techniques to create Japanese paper. Now, the traditional technique is to create washi from the barks of trees. But for these two companies that we are introducing, they are actually we see an advance in techniques. The first company, for example, Paparu, it makes paper from food waste. So in their particular case, it's discarded rice. The second company is Soup Inc. It makes paper from seeds. So after use, you can return it to the soil, and it actually will grow plants. So this article actually is a reminder that there are sustainable options, and we should really consider using finding a way to use Japanese paper. Mm.
Yeah, I love this. Seeds inside the paper, and you can grow something after you use the paper. And then using shredded paper, adding the seeds so it's so circular. This seems like such a great solution. I've actually seen some, very few, but some business cards which have the seeds paper inside. I've also seen business cards with the banana paper, which I know
Yeah.
Lush and Starbucks is now serving some of their paper products from the African banana paper. That's a great initiative
Yeah.
in Japan.
Mhm.
So anything which comes from waste, comes from food waste,
Mhm.
and can be made into a product we need, and then it can go back to composting, back to the environment.
Mhm.
How wonderful. I
It
love it.
is. It is. And if you think about it, crafting Japanese paper is an centuries old technique. Now, some of us might get the idea, old techniques, yeah, it's not gonna find its way into modern days. What's the use when it's so ineffective? But right here, what we see is evolution of the techniques. I mean, creating paper from food waste. I don't. Okay, probably if you give ancient Japan another century or two, maybe they will find some way, some techniques. But this paper crafting technique has found a modern use. It has found a new value in tackling a modern problem, and I think that's one of the wonderful things about Japanese artistry is able to evolve to find modern meaning, find in
Isn't
the
that
modern context.
wonderful? Yeah.
Mm.
I interviewed a really wonderful artist,
Mhm.
and she moved to the rural area, I think in Ishikawa,
Mhm.
Mika Horie.
Yeah.
And she is living in this deep rural area because they have a kind of weed or tree nearby called gampi. And
Gampi.
she fell in love as an artist. She fell in love with the high quality gampi washi paper that
Mhm.
she found in Kyoto when she was a student there, art student.
Mhm.
And so she started researching about Gampi paper, and she went to this rural area to get the resource from her backyard,
Mhm.
to soak it in the river outside her house, to pound it on the rock outside her
Mhm.
house. And then if she's not happy with it, she just tears it up and puts it back to nature.
Mhm.
And so, as an artist who's interested in the circular economy and the sustainability, it's just such a beautiful story. And
Mhm.
it makes me, as someone who loves art, want to buy that because
Mhm.
I know at the end of that art's life, it can go back to nature
Mhm.
naturally too. How
Mm.
wonderful, right?
Indeed, indeed. I think I think we often forget that ancient techniques are have minimal impact on the environment. And as you say, we want to buy. I mean, we want ethical products. We want to use things that we know hasn't been bad for anyone or bad for the environment, and using it is actually very good for our well-being. Yeah, I can understand the feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful. And we use so much paper in
And we
Japan,
do.
right? So
Correct.
why aren't we using more locally sourced paper,
Mm-hmm. I
right?
think
And even if you
material,
recycle
right?
the paper,
Mm-hmm.
you create a lot of pollution. You
Mm-hmm.
have to use a lot of energy.
The,
But if you make paper from food waste, like the
mm-hmm.
examples here, or from
Mm-hmm.
weeds, it's just the perfect way
Yes.
to do it, right?
But Japanese paper takes time to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I think that reveals a problem with our society. That's mass consumption. And that's one of the reasons. What back to what we talked about 10 hours. Can we redesign our business so that we don't use paper or use less paper? And if we can use less paper, why not Japanese paper? Mm.
Yeah. One more thing, just to add, I
Mm.
interviewed a woman who is running an animal sanctuary in
Uh-huh.
Chiba,
Chiba,
and
right?
she said if anybody has shredded paper from your home or from your
Mm-hmm.
office, if you can send the shredded paper to her, she uses shredded paper in all of the animal cages and animal pens, so
Ah,
she can make use of any shredded paper waste as well. So
nice.
I'll put the link below for uh,
Mm-hmm.
animal sanctuary in Chiba. Yeah,
Yeah.
she really needs help, not only
Mm-hmm.
donations, but even waste that she
Mm-hmm.
can reuse is really useful for her. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another part of it, isn't it, Roger? Like finding someone or some company that wants
Mm-hmm.
your waste.
Mm-hmm.
That's another great solution, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think at some point that we need a directory for this kind of thing. Yeah. Like I say, whenever before we use anything, we want to know where it comes from and where it goes. And where it goes is actually quite an issue. How do I get rid of this? And yeah, if we can have a directory that includes that animal sanctuary, that we can send to, yeah, it
Yeah.
helps consumers.
Yeah. Another example, I visited organic farmer nearby, Thomas Klepper,
Mm-hmm.
and he is taking down a lot of old buildings and renovating the old buildings. And he has a lot of waste, like old Japanese tiles. And it seems really like a quality material that
Mm-hmm.
somebody might want to use.
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't found anybody who wants to use it. So he's thinking of lining his pathways, making drains. But if anybody
Mm.
thinks of a use for Japanese roof
Mm-hmm.
tiles,
Mm-hmm.
please get in touch with Thomas Klepper.
Okay. In the past, I mean in Kyoto there has been examples of people reusing tiles. They build it
They use it
walls.
like on the outside wall or
Yeah,
something,
they
right?
do.
But
So
there's
yeah.
don't you often notice when you walk around Japan, you'll see it stacked next to houses.
Mm-hmm.
So there must be a lot of people who just keep it because it's too good to throw away,
I
and
mean,
you have to pay to throw it away.
mm-hmm.
But how can I reuse it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you know?
Yeah. I think I don't know if there's some technology to break down the material, but yeah, I think there's a lot of chance. There's a lot of opportunities that we can reuse.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like your idea of having some kind of information share
Mm-hmm.
for waste
Yes.
recycling. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know like for old clothes or
Mm-hmm.
products, you
Mm-hmm.
people resell it on eBay or Yahoo Auctions.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if on Yahoo Auctions people also sell things like roof tiles. Maybe.
Maybe.
All right, let's go
Wouldn't be
to
surprised.
yeah, you never know. Let's go to the next
Yeah.
article, a very interesting one, more about gender
Mm-hmm.
and how men are using nail polish and going to beauty salons, and
Mm-hmm.
how that might help better awareness or understanding or acceptance
Mm-hmm.
of gender kind of diversity,
Mm.
right?
For this, for me personally, I see it as gender expression. You know?
Yeah.
So it's kind of strange to say gender expression. What this article wants to say is you're free. You should be free to express yourselves. You know, for society to embrace that kind of diversity. So this article, what this article is talking about is about Nail Book, a nail salon reservation app. They did a survey over 100 plus men, and these men have made a reservation on the app. So when they did the survey, why do you go to the salon? So the surveys actually were allowed more than one reason, and 60% of them said they wanted to groom themselves. 30% wanted to they enjoy the experience of going to a salon. 25% like nail art and they like color. Now you might think, oh, this young men are going to salons. They must be very young. But when the survey reviewed that, more than 70% of them are over 30 years old. Okay, so maybe buying power is one factor. But the reasons, let's see, some of the reasons that they give why men go to nail salon is so um so for grooming, not only have I started paying attention to the care of my fingertips, I have also started to pay attention to the care of other body parts. It's good to see my fingertips in good condition. Or for work, women at our client companies often say that my nails are beautiful, which helps me make a good impression. Um, so, this article, yeah, like I say, it ends with a reminder that we should be free to express ourselves. Not say, I think we are approaching an era where makeup, nail art is not only for the females, and I think society needs to realize that we shouldn't be attaching again gender identities to activities, so that anyone are free to express themselves. Mm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
awesome. I like that idea. And I've often noticed a bit more acceptance of less strict gender roles in Japan. Of course, you have like both sides, right? Like in school, I just had a conversation the other day with a woman on Twitter, and
Mhm.
her daughter
Mhm.
is in a school, a primary school, where they have a boys first policy, where they boys sit at the front of the class, and they're very public about it. In
Mhm.
2022 this was happening. So she was very active, and she was like, this is not okay,
That's
and
not
she
okay.
wrote letters to the local government and got it changed. Good job.
Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful. But this is crazy that that
Mhm.
still happens sometimes,
Mhm.
right? And then sometimes in job hunting, or women getting into medical university in
Mm.
Tokyo, even,
Yeah.
there's a real gender bias.
It is.
But
It
in
is.
other senses, like you are more likely to see men holding hands or men hugging each other than in America, maybe.
Mhm.
So you might see men who have tweezed eyebrows, like
Mhm.
beautifully manicured and well taken care of skin. I
Mhm.
think maybe more often than I've seen in
Mhm.
other countries. So this seems to go along really well with that,
Mhm.
about getting manicures, taking care of yourself, but even adding color,
Mhm.
even however you identify as a person of male, female, or however you identify, color is okay for everybody. I love that.
Yeah, indeed. And I think if let's say we go to fashion centers like Harajuku or Shibuya, I think we can see that kind of overlap. These fashion leaders, I would call them, are ahead of the trend. So I believe they have already stopped saying this is male, this is female only, and and have been trying overlaps, and they have making big strides. So I think what I'm trying to get at is a trend for areas that have that kind of trend, and they become the core for spreading that kind of acceptance for diversity. Now I've traveled a number of areas in Japan. I think, for example, Kyushu is is not very strict, but we still see remnants of this gender roles, and people want that kind of a separation, which I'm not comfortable with. I believe Japan, as a developed country, one of the nations that people often look to and see what they do, Japan can do better. And like you say, I think we are seeing improvements for that. Mm.
Yeah. Wonderful. There was a nice reference to a video
Mhm.
in the article, Dona Tokimo,
Yeah.
very popular pop song from the 1990s,
Yes.
kind of talking about self-expression, right?
Yeah.
That
So,
was a nice reference.
mm, so I didn't know that this song was about self-expression in the first place. It's most of most people, I would say almost all Japanese would know this song. Is quite famous, and the lyrics actually do appeal to that kind of self-expression. To be more open. It's a very encouraging a tune too, and it gives people the courage. I think it's also important that the song also acts as a reminder. You know, we should be more accepting of others. In however they want to express themselves. Mm-hmm.
I love this. The lyrics quoted in the article, to be myself, I want to embrace the feeling of being able to express what I like,
Mm-hmm.
is a message to those who are hesitating to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
That is a noble thing to express what
Mm-hmm.
you like.
That's right.
And I think many people, even if you don't know the title of the song, you've probably heard it.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, right? It's a very
Yeah,
catchy tune.
it is.
So if you follow the link to the video, and then I'm sure you've heard this song before. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very cheerful, fun song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the writer using it as a noble thing. Yeah, I think it is a noble thing to be yourself, especially when our environment, our world is not ideal in accepting diversity yet, especially in Japan. Yeah, that's one of the issues. But yeah, we're getting there. I think we're making slow but good progress. I think.
Yeah. And the few people I've talked to in the series, like Tiffany Rosdale, who's
Mm-hmm.
a coach, she herself um, represents people who have transitioned
Mm-hmm.
between genders and trying to encourage other people to accept who they are and where
Mm-hmm.
they are and where they want to be as part of self-coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
a life coach. I think that's so important. And no matter how you identify, you want to be able to express yourself
Yeah. Right.
freely. And we are in a society, and I think especially in Japan, but not only Japan, this happens elsewhere,
Mm-hmm.
where we are so influenced by what other people say, how other people react to us.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to express yourself how you want to is sometimes very difficult, right?
Yeah, that's right. I think having creating a safe space for these communities are important too, and we have seen an increase of such so-called places where people are free to go and just be themselves. And I think we and I believe someone quoted it as a second home because that is where they can feel at ease and be themselves. I think yeah, that's one essential factor that we need to introduce, especially for Japan, that resists diversity at the moment.
And diversity is such a wonderful topic to talk about, because if we pull up one marginalized group, one group that's being discriminated against, if we pull even one group up, it pulls up everybody,
Mm-hmm.
anybody who has discrimination,
Mm-hmm.
and increases awareness of the need for inclusion for
Mm-hmm.
everybody. And everybody is not one kind of way.
No.
We should be aware that people are different
Mm-hmm.
and not expect them
Mm-hmm.
or force them to be the same,
Yeah.
because nobody is the same, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's go to the next article, and then we might loop back to the 10 R's, because
Oh,
I think we have more to talk about for that.
okay.
But the last of the 4 articles we wanted to talk about today was about foster care. Very important and interesting topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this article comes from our colleague Ayami Shinam. Now she talked with Mamoru Watanabe, who really helped us with this article. He is a representative at a Japanese NPO that supports foster parents. And this article gives us a look into the fostering situation in Japan. This article opens with sharing the problem in Japan. Now there are 45,000 children in Japan separated from their biological parents for various reasons. 80% of them are in institutions. 20% are in foster care. Now, 20% is shocking because if we look at, if we compare ourselves with other developed countries, for US it's more than 70%. In Australia, it's more than 90%. This is a big gap, and I believe we can classify it as a big problem. So the article explains why. So there's a number of reasons, like Japan is not a parenting friendly country. Potential parents feel that they lack support, socially, emotionally, even financially. On top of that, fostering children have unique challenges, and it gets harder. So only a few people feel encouraged to do fostering, and because they are not the typical conventional family, they might get isolated from the community. And there's also the issue of not getting enough support from government, even though there's a law saying that regardless of your social or financial circumstances, you should be able to get support. So what can we do? Well, first, there is an improvement. What we learned from Mr. Watanabe is that social services and funds have been for foster care itself has been growing recently. The government is going to introduce child and family agency that actually uses a child-centered approach that has been non-existent in Japan. A lot of laws, a lot of policies are based on what parents think rather than what's best for the child. But a large chunk of this article for solution is making communities inclusive. Japanese culture, we talk about this just now. Japanese culture tends to exclude what's different. People who do not fit conventional categories, we want to stay away from you, whether consciously or unconsciously. So we need to have a conversation about the needs and accountability to vulnerable children. And the last advice that we received was make sure that no family, including foster families, do not suffer isolation or exclusion from the community. So a big part, like I said, having inclusive communities is very important. And it's not just about ensuring adequate support for fosterers. There's the big picture, which is a community that includes involves all kinds of families.
Yeah. It's so amazing to compare to other countries, like you have in the beginning of the article here, like you said, 45,000 children in Japan separated from their biological parents. So 45,000 children living in orphanages. Only 20% live in foster care.
That's right.
So compared to America, where 77% live in foster care, or Australia, 93% live in foster care. So, of course, as you said, the UN recommends that family-based foster care is so much healthier for children growing up. To have that extra support, there's just not enough attention in the orphanages, right, for the individual children. And I had the chance to talk to somebody about being a foster parent in the series last year or 2 years ago, and she gave some great insights about it's not easy because a lot of the kids, especially the older ones, they might have emotional issues because they can't really trust people to be around. But being someone, even a part-time foster parent, having them over to your house sometimes. They don't have to live at your house full-time, right? So there's a lot of roles that people can play who feel that you would like to be a foster parent. I think definitely worth reaching out to organizations and seeing if you can try. Even if you just visit the orphanage and spend time with the kids, that also helps.
Yeah.
They have a labor shortage, lack of staff too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And it's very strange, probably because of urbanization. But if we look at Edo period, we look at ancient Japan. For example, let's say a child loses his or her parents to natural disaster. He or she doesn't get put in an institution or somewhere and forgotten. But what they have is a system that everyone in the community is the parent. They would take care of the child. Everyone's looking out for the child. So somewhere along the way we have lost that, and we have we have so called it's a I wish I had a better word to put them aside, and because they are out of sight, they are out of mind, and subsequently the community has I think forgotten that there is a need for these children. Mm. If we can find that way back to creating a community that looks out for each other, and I think it's very difficult in urban cities. It's not impossible. We need really good a system, fine system. If we look at rural areas, yeah, I think it's easier to look out for one another. Mm.
Even in the cities, I think it is possible.
Mhm.
For example, we're just outside Hiroshima City here, but
Mhm.
we have a nice community, and we feel like we know our neighbors and they know us.
Mhm.
And one of my older neighbors, she's in her late 80s, and she always says, I'm so happy when I see your kids and they say good morning to me. Like
Yes.
aisatsu is so
Mhm.
important, right? So
Mhm.
even if I just tell my kids, make sure when you see the neighbors, you say "Ohayo gozaimasu" or
Mhm.
"Konnichiwa," and then the neighbors are so happy. They really appreciate that. And then conversely, they're going to watch out for our house and our kids
Mhm.
and help them if they ever need help, So in the article as well, you're talking about this outside the immediate family support network,
Mhm.
right?
Indeed.
So you
Indeed.
have the community, you have the schools, you
Mhm.
have people in social services
Mhm.
a little bit further out. But having, and you mentioned the Edo Jidai, right?
Yeah.
Having that bigger network of support really helps,
Mhm.
right?
Do you feel that in Japan it's kind of hard to break that first, yeah, in a way, aisatsu. I'm not just saying ohayou gozaimasu and you just finish. We don't any converse, but actually try to take that relationship a step further. I think in
Yeah.
Japan it's kind of hard to break that first barrier. But
Sometimes it
mm,
is, right? And I think you're right. Maybe in some rural communities it is
mhm.
easier because you have scheduled cleaning days or scheduled community
And then
event
yeah,
days
yeah,
where you have to work together
yeah.
as a
Mm-hmm.
part of the neighborhood. And I know some people maybe don't like that, and so they want to live in the city in a mansion and not have that connection.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, there's so many good points about doing that, that if you volunteer and even once a year you like cut the weeds from the area, and once every season you get out and sweep the leaves in your street, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you clean the garbage area, or you do something that's like for the common good, for the mutual benefit of everyone, not just for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
A couple years ago we had our neighborhood cleaning day,
Mm-hmm.
and when I went out at the starting time, it was already clean because everybody in my neighborhood gets up so early. They already cleaned everything. So I
Mm-hmm.
just started cutting back some of the trees in my garden,
Mm-hmm.
which overhang the public areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the women went by and she said, "Are you just cleaning your own garden?" And I was like, "No, no, I'm coming. So then that was a nice like nudge.
Mm-hmm.
You should be out with the
Mm-hmm.
other people. You
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be doing your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, okay, that's a good hint. I'll be back there.
They're very good at this. Yeah, I have been the benefactor of such hints before. Yes, thank you for the hint.
Yeah. And like at the Kominka Summit as well,
Mm-hmm.
at the Minka Summit this last weekend, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people were talking about the community aspects of moving to rural areas,
Mm-hmm.
buying an old house,
Mm-hmm.
remodeling an old house, having that balance where you're not drawn in too much to the community aspect,
Mhm.
because there is that counterpoint, right?
Mhm.
Like some people, if they say, oh yeah, I'll be a part of the community, and then every day there's a lot to be done, right? Like they become a member of
Mhm.
that community network.
Right.
So finding a balance that works for you. There was
Mhm.
one guy I interviewed, Paul Fredale, who they took over this big old house, like
Mhm.
300-year-old house, and it had a really big garden in front. But for many years, nobody was tending it, so it was
Mhm.
just all overgrown with bamboo.
Right. Right.
So when he cleared the bamboo, he told all the neighbors, go ahead and use the garden if whenever you want,
Mhm.
because there was no nearby like public garden or public
Mhm.
space. And he said he's so happy when he comes out and he sees someone sat in the bench in his garden reading a book or chatting with a friend.
Mhm. Right.
And so that's another aspect of giving back to the community, even by just offering use of your space if you
Mhm.
have a big space, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
I thought that was a nice story.
Indeed. Indeed. It is. I've heard of such acts too. The last one I heard was in Tokushima. She did the same thing. She makes the garden so beautiful, and anyone is free. It's open. Anyone can come. And what she does is she even has a little sweet shop, she call it, where
Oh,
you're here, come have some tea, have some sweets. Wow, yeah.
that's so nice.
She
And
people
yeah, so
she acts like the core of the community. Mm,
yeah,
sorry.
I think that's so good. And like you can see the honesty boxes
Mm-hmm.
around my community, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the local farmers or people growing food in their garden, or they have a fruit tree, and they'll put some in this little open box,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's a price on it. You put the coin in the box,
Mm-hmm.
and you take what you want,
Yeah.
right? And I love that this exists
It's
in
yes.
my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when you're choosing a neighborhood to live in, finding an honesty box, seeing that there's a community aspect to it, you
Mm-hmm.
can definitely find a neighborhood that you're gonna feel comfortable
Mm-hmm.
living in, I think.
Yeah, that's right. I think in this era, not everyone, not yet, but in Japan, a lot of people are realizing, hey, city life may not be good. After this COVID, yeah, if you don't feel safe now, I want to move back. Now, and when they move back, they actually find themselves to have more. They find life more meaningful. Find themselves. And I think part of it is because rural areas tend to be more nature orientated, so they are reconnecting with that. And again, it's not just nature but community itself. For example, in cities, you're just working. It's a task you're given. But when you go back to community, you have to not say you're forced to, but you have to participate in the community. And as time goes by, you realize, hey, this community needs this, and that's where I can contribute. And I think life can be more meaningful in rural areas. Mm. I wish I was there at
Yeah.
the last weekend.
Oh yeah. Oh, at the Minka Summit, it was
Mm.
wonderful. And to be honest, it was just run by volunteers. And
Oh.
so at first, when I went, I was a little bit worried
Mm-hmm.
about the volunteers taking on too much, inviting 300 people to this small town.
Mm-hmm.
um there's only, if somebody's negative about it or something, it could have a negative effect on their lifestyle.
Right, right, right.
But the community was so positive, everybody was so welcoming.
Mm-hmm.
It went really well. We were able to visit people's empty houses in the
Mm-hmm.
community as well, to talk to them and see how they had renovated. So it was really wonderful. And thanks to one of your links on Zenberg for
Mm-hmm.
the 10 R's, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
it led me to this education hub. And so I wrote about the Minka Summit
Mm-hmm.
on the education hub, because I think this Minka Summit is such a wonderful example for other areas of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and of course other areas of Japan. Because having an event like this where you are introducing, it's not only possible to move to the rural areas and reuse an old home, But it's really attractive, right?
Mm-hmm.
For your lifestyle to have a
Mm-hmm.
better quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I see a lot of potential, not only for this group doing this event once a year, but hopefully other areas of Japan also doing it.
Yeah. And do you feel that as times go on, we will be able to, not say we are not tackling it now, but the Akia problem that we have in Japan, the abandoned houses. Do you think that this can lead us to a solution for that?
I think so. I think
Awesome.
it has to help in some way. The problem is so big
Mm-hmm.
and it's getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of building regulations
Mm-hmm.
in general,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of small changes that should happen.
Mm-hmm.
One of the women I talked to, who she's an advocate and an activist
Mm-hmm.
working with government, working with legal about making changes in government with regulation, which will have big changes across Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying there's one important bill happening soon in terms of housing infrastructure, housing changes.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I know there is a lot of support from the government, local governments, especially if you go and buy an old property and fix it up, they'll give you some of the money to fix it up. If you're under
Mm-hmm.
40, I don't know why they have that age limit,
Mm-hmm.
but if you're under 40, there's also a lot of government support to go and settle in a rural area and be part of that community. You can sometimes get like 100,000 yen a month as support to be there,
Mm-hmm.
because they're looking for new ways to get people to move to the rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of people can still keep their jobs like online through
Mm-hmm.
teleworking. So there's a lot of great initiatives happening, but once again, it's hard to get all the information in one place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So this
Right.
kind of Minka Summit really is a great way
Mm-hmm.
to share
Awesome.
information.
That's great.
Yeah. We have just a few more
Exciting.
minutes. I thought we'd have more time to go back to the 10 R's. There was one more part of the 10 R's though that I wanted to bring up. You mentioned, of
Mm-hmm.
course, kamikatsu
Mm-hmm. Right.
and having this central location
Mm-hmm.
for garbage sorting.
Yeah.
And in terms of community, I think this links really well,
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have garbage pickup in this town of Kamikatsu in
Mm-hmm.
Tokushima. So all of the community people have to go to this central location
Mm-hmm.
to sort their waste. And it might seem like a hassle,
Mm-hmm.
but whenever I've been there, I always appreciate how much the community kind of enjoys it,
Mm-hmm.
because they have a chance to talk together
Yeah,
and
that's right.
look at the reuse shop, the
Mm-hmm.
kuru shop that they have there, and maybe leave something, maybe take something that they
Mm-hmm.
can use at their
Yeah,
house.
that's right.
There's another like education center where they
Mm-hmm.
can sit and chat with other local entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
or their friends. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a front like beautiful green grassy area where
Yeah.
they can look at the mountains and relax, you
Mm.
know?
You
So
can
I
bring your
think
children there and play. Right?
yeah, so that's like very focused on zero waste, but
Mm-hmm.
so much wider in
Mm-hmm.
terms of community support and
Mm-hmm.
keeping people kind of actively
Mm-hmm.
connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the community part is the key success factor for Kamikatsu. When there's a period, well, I did interviews with them twice. When we first interviewed them, they didn't have the center built up yet. It was a simple building, a simple white building. And 2 years after that, when I went back and asked them, what is your success factor now? And it's still the same community. And how the community works is people gather there. Like you said, people enjoy going there. It's not a hassle because they get to connect with other people. They get to talk with other people who live in the same town as them, people with the same concerns, same enjoyment. And that is where they feel, in a way, acceptance and identity of being a resident there. Of course, the environment is great, as you know, the 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 keishiki, the view is fantastic. So it is an enjoyment to be there, and it probably 10 years later, it's still going to be. they don't have to change their success strategy, which is binding the community in this. And in some sense, zero waste is secondary to them because of the community. They enjoy that, and and in a way it's fun to do it. I was there having a meal. I overheard a conversation, and they were talking, waste during food. Usually, you don't talk about garbage while you're eating, but for them, it's just daily conversation. Oh, actually, you should, separate your waste like this, like this, like this. Kamikatsu does this. Oh, the neighboring town does this, and it's and we can kamikatsu is not an overnight thing. It's not a 1 year project, 2 year project. It's decades of project, and they have cemented that culture in kamikatsu. And I think that's one of the reasons why kamikatsu is so famous internationally, because of that success.
Well, also they have great ambassadors from
Oh yeah.
Kamikatsu, like Akira Sakano, who has been to the Davos convention, who has done TED Talks.
And I'm
So having those representatives from your community who tell the message outside is also a really important part. But of course, Zenberg, Roger,
Thank you.
you and me with my show, we are also doing something similar. We are trying to spread the message about all these great businesses, all these great projects and strategies to the wider community, right? That's our aim.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And
Well, that is our hour. Thank you so much, Roger. That was
thank
wonderful.
you. Yeah, time flies. Having fun. I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I was kind of nervous, but yeah,
Yeah,
you made it
no,
through.
you were great.
Thank you,
So
thank you.
we will try to do this again in May. We'll try to do this at least once a month and catch you up on some of the great topics that Zenberg Media is covering. Please check out the articles we covered today. I put all the links below. Thank you so much, Roger. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Have a great day. Take care.
Bye.